The dusty plaza of Cedar Ridge baked under the merciless August sun. The ground was packed hard as iron, and the air shimmered like a furnace. Cowboys leaned against hitching posts, their spurs glinting when they shifted. Merchants called from their doorways, their voices dry from dust and long hours. Women in faded calico dresses hurried by, parasols tilted not just against the heat, but the unwanted eyes that followed them. Then she came. Martha Coleman. Folks called her the mountain medicine woman when they needed her, and worse names when they didn't. She walked straight down the middle of the street, tall and proud despite the sweat glistening on her dark skin. Her homespun dress was simple, her leather satchel heavy with herbs, roots, and mountain remedies. Every step she took drew whispers, laughter, and that same sharp edge of small-town gossip. But Martha didn't flinch. She stopped in the center of the square and searched the line of men gathered outside the saloon until her gaze landed on one she didn't know. A stranger. He sat on the saloon steps, hat low, boots dusty from the trail, and his hand resting easy near the gun on his hip. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing. He just watched her, calm and steady, like a man used to seeing storms come and go. Martha squared her shoulders, marched straight toward him, and stopped close enough that he had to tilt his head back to see her face. "You," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a rifle crack, "tonight you're coming to my bed." For a heartbeat the plaza froze. Then came the roar of laughter, whistles, and catcalls. A cowboy slapped his knee. Someone hollered something crude. But the stranger didn't join in. His gray eyes, cold, thoughtful, storm-colored, studied her like he could see past the boldness to the fear she was fighting to hide. "Ma'am," he said slowly, his voice low and even, "that's a mighty strong invitation for a Sunday afternoon." Martha lifted her chin. "I'm not inviting you to sin, mister. I'm offering you a proposition, a legal one. I need a husband, and I need him now." The laughter died. A marriage offer was a different matter entirely. Business like that wasn't something people joked about in Cedar Ridge. The stranger stood, unfolding himself from the steps with quiet power. He was broad-shouldered, taller than her by a few inches, and carried himself like a man who'd seen enough of life not to scare easy. "Name's Samuel Hawkins," he said, tipping his hat. "Most folks just call me Sam." "Martha Coleman," she replied. "My father was Josiah Coleman." Something flickered in his eyes. Everyone had heard that name. Josiah Coleman, the freedman who'd bought 1,200 acres of mountain land rich in silver ore, who'd built a life out of nothing, and who died 3 months ago under whispers of foul play. "I heard about your father," Sam said carefully, "and I heard there's trouble with his land." "Trouble?" Martha gave a hard, bitter laugh. "That's one way to say it." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a folded paper, sealed with a territorial stamp. "The court says if I don't marry within 30 days, I lose everything my father built. 23 days are already gone." Sam studied her. "And the 3 men who were courting you?" "All gone," she said flatly. "One left for California, another ran home to Missouri, and the last one was paid off to disappear. I didn't have to ask who was behind it." "Mayor Aldrich," Sam said. Martha's silence was her answer. The mayor owned half of Cedar Ridge and wanted the other half. Josiah Coleman's mountain land, rumored to hide veins of silver, was the one prize still out of his reach. "Why me?" Sam asked. "You don't know a thing about me. I know you've been in town 3 days. I know Aldrich hired you to keep order during the cattle drive, but you haven't taken his money yet. That tells me you've got your own mind." Her voice softened, steady but urgent. "And I know the look of a man who watches instead of joins the laughter. My father taught me to read people. You're my best chance." The crowd had gone quiet again, hanging on every word. "What's in it for me?" Sam asked. "Partnership," she said. "Marriage in name. Legal and binding. I keep my land and my father's legacy. You get 20% of any silver profits and a place to stay when you need one. After a year, we can part ways clean." "And if I say no?" Martha's voice dropped. "Then Mayor Aldrich gets my land in 7 days' time. Everything my father worked for, gone. I'll be left with nothing but regret that I wasn't brave enough to ask a stranger for help." Sam looked down at the dusty street, then back up at her. He saw the pride, the fear, the stubbornness of a woman who had run out of time but not courage. Finally, he nodded. "When?" he asked. Hope flashed across her face. "Judge Peters rides through Tuesday. We can." "Tonight," Sam interrupted. "Reverend Mills is still in town. We'll marry before Aldrich has time to stop it." Martha blinked. "Tonight?" "I meant what I said," Sam replied. "But before we do, we talk. Alone." He offered his arm. The gesture was so polite it caught the crowd off guard. Martha hesitated, then placed her hand on it. Together, they walked through the parted crowd toward the small white church on the hill, leaving whispers in their wake. Inside, the air was cool and dim, the scent of old pine and candle wax still lingering. Sam sat down on a pew, motioning for her to do the same. "Now," he said quietly, "tell me the truth, all of it." Martha drew a long breath. "My father was born a slave in Virginia, fought for the Union, saved every cent, came west after the war. He could read and write when few could. That's how he got this land. He paid the taxes when no one else understood the law. He taught me everything. How to read contracts, assay silver, heal sickness. Then last winter, he started to change, shaking hands, seeing things that weren't there. Doc Morrison said it was mountain fever, but it wasn't." Sam's eyes narrowed. "Poison?" Martha nodded, pulling a small glass vial from her bag. "I had it tested. Mercury, enough to drive a man mad. But a white doctor's word against mine? No court would believe me." Sam turned the vial in his hand. "So you married to keep the land and fight from there?" "Yes," Martha said, "and I need someone who isn't afraid of men like Aldrich." Sam handed back the vial. "You're trusting me with a lot for a man you just met. My father used to say, desperation makes philosophers of us all. I don't have time for doubt." He studied her for a long moment, then stood. "All right, Mrs. Coleman, let's get you married before the devil catches wind of it." As they stepped back into the fading light, the sky burned orange over the mountains. Behind the saloon window, Mayor Aldrich watched them go, his expression darkening like a brewing storm. He wouldn't let this stand, not without a fight. The little white church at the edge of Cedar Ridge had seen plenty of weddings, but none quite like this one. As the last colors of sunset faded from the mountains, Martha Coleman and Samuel Hawkins stood before Reverend Mills with two witnesses, Mrs. Chen, the laundress, and old Pete Winters, a prospector with a cane and a sharp tongue. "Marriage ain't something to take lightly," Pete muttered as he signed the church register, "even if you're doing it to beat the devil at his own game." "I know," Martha said softly. Her hands trembled just a little, though her chin stayed high. Reverend Mills cleared his throat. "This is a rushed affair, Mrs. Coleman. I like to meet with couples, speak on the meaning of vows." "Reverend," Sam said quietly, "time's something we don't have. The lady's inheritance depends on her being married, and there are men who'll do anything to stop that." Mills studied them both. Then, seeing the calm in Sam's eyes and the fierce resolve in Martha's, he nodded. "Very well, let's begin." The ceremony was simple. No flowers, no music. Just two people standing side by side beneath the cross, lit by the flicker of a single lantern. "Do you, Samuel Hawkins, take this woman?" "I do." "And do you, Martha Coleman, take this man?" "I do," she said clearly. Reverend Mills smiled faintly. "Then, by the authority vested in me by the territory of Colorado and Almighty God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may, well, shake hands." Instead, Sam lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "Mrs. Hawkins," he said. "Mr. Hawkins," she replied, her heart thudding like a runaway horse. Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with her sleeve, and old Pete grinned. "Well, I'll be. A proper marriage and a war declaration in one go." But before anyone could relax, the church doors banged open. Jake Morrison, foreman to Mayor Aldrich and brother to the town's crooked doctor, stood framed in the doorway with three men behind him. "Well, well," he drawled. "Heard there was a weddin'. Guess I wasn't invited." Sam stepped forward, his hand resting easy near his gun. "Private affair, Morrison." "Family only." "Family," Morrison snorted. "A drifter, a colored woman, and a couple of has-beens. That's what you call family now?" Pete Winters took one slow step forward, his cane tapping the wooden floor. "Better than thieves and murderers, boy. You might want to think on that." Quote. Morrison's face darkened, but Sam's voice was calm. "You draw in at church, Morrison, and I'll bury you before the amen." A heavy silence hung in the air. Morrison's hand twitched toward his pistol, but he saw something in Sam's eyes that made him stop. The man didn't bluff. Finally, Morrison smirked. "Just came to deliver a message." From Mayor Aldrich. He tossed an envelope onto a pew. "Your daddy's debts are being called in, Martha. Every cent due by week's end. You'll be homeless before your wedding dress cools." Morrison and his men turned to leave. "You're making a mistake siding with her, Hawkins," he said over his shoulder. "Aldrich owns this town." Sam's voice followed him out into the night. Not for long. When the doors shut behind them, the church seemed smaller, quieter. Martha picked up the envelope, tore it open, and scanned the papers. Her face hardened. "Forged," she said. "Papa kept perfect records. He never borrowed a dime from Aldrich." Sam looked over her shoulder. "You've got proof?" "In his strongbox at the cabin," Martha replied. "But I doubt any judge Aldrich owns would care." "Then we'll find one he doesn't," Sam said. Reverend Mills laid a hand on her shoulder. "You've got God on your side, child. Sometimes that's enough." Martha smiled sadly. "Out here, Reverend. It helps to have a man who can shoot straight, too." They left the church together, their witnesses following close behind. The moon hung low over the mountains, and the air smelled of dust and pine. Sam walked with his hand resting lightly on his revolver, eyes scanning the shadows. "Do you always expect trouble?" Martha asked as they reached their horses. "Expecting trouble keeps me alive," he said. "And tonight, I figure trouble's expecting us." He was right. When they reached her cabin in the mountains, a thin curl of smoke was still rising from the chimney, but something felt off. The horses snorted uneasily. Sam dismounted, scanning the tree line. "Stay here," he murmured. Martha ignored him and followed anyway, her rifle in hand. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed until Martha saw the letter on the table. It bore the same seal as Aldrich's false documents. She opened it and read aloud. "You can marry whoever you please, Miss Coleman. The law won't save what your blood cannot." Her jaw tightened. "He's not going to stop." "No," Sam said, "but neither are we." The next morning, Martha led him through the forest trail toward a hidden spring. She showed him the markers her father had taught her, the white oak that cured fever, the ridge where comfrey grew wild. "You know these mountains like their family," Sam said. "They are," Martha replied. "They've kept me alive longer than most people." Her cabin came into view, a strong, simple structure of gray logs and stone, built by her father's hands. Inside, shelves lined with glass jars and old books filled the walls. Sam noticed the neat rows of herbs, the open medical journal on the table, and the smell of sage and pine. "You're a doctor," he said quietly. "I'm a healer," Martha corrected. "Doctors charge $1 for sugar water. I treat people who can't pay." Sam smiled faintly. "Your father raised one stubborn woman." Quote, "He raised me to survive," Martha said. They sat by the fire, and for the first time since they met, silence settled between them. Not awkward, but heavy with unspoken things. "What happens now?" Sam asked. "We wait for Aldrich to make his next move," Martha said. "And when he does, we fight back, with proof, with law, and if it comes to it, with lead." Before Sam could answer, the distant thunder of hooves echoed through the valley. He moved to the window. "6 riders," he said, "Morrison's men." Martha rose and took down the rifle from above the door. "You handle that colt fine," she said. "But on this land, I stand beside you." Sam gave her a brief nod. "Then let's give them a welcome they won't forget." They stepped out onto the porch as the riders approached. Morrison was at the front, smirking beneath his hat. "Evenin', Mrs. Hawkins," he called. "Heard you found yourself a husband." Thought we'd come by to congratulate you." "Consider your congratulations delivered," Sam said evenly. "Now ride on." Morrison's grin widened. "Can't do that, friend. The mayor's concerned about your safety. Says the lady's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe she's not thinking straight." Martha raised her rifle. "My thinking's clear enough to see what you're trying to do. You tell Aldrich I'm still standing, still married, and still holding this land." Morrison's smile faded. His men shifted uneasily in their saddles, sensing the edge in her voice and the quiet danger in the man standing beside her. "This ain't over," Morrison said finally. "It's just beginning," Sam replied. They watched the riders disappear down the mountain road. Only when the dust had settled did Martha lower her gun. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "I know," Sam replied, "but next time we'll be ready." He looked at her, this strong, determined woman who'd stood her ground against half a town and won. "Mrs. Hawkins," he said, "you've started a war." Martha's eyes met his. "Then let's make sure we finish it." 3 days after the wedding, Sam woke to the smell of smoke. For one breath, he thought it was the morning fire in Martha's stove. Then he heard the crackle outside. He was out the door in seconds, pulling on his boots and grabbing the water barrel. The shed behind the cabin was burning, orange flames licking up the walls. "Martha!" he shouted. She was already there in her nightdress and shawl, hauling water like her life depended on it. Together they fought the blaze, Sam soaking the roof while Martha doused the lower walls. By sunrise the fire was out, but half the shed lay in blackened ruins. Sam crouched, touching the ground. "Coal oil," he said grimly. "They poured it. You can smell it." Martha knelt beside the ruins of her herbs, her voice tight. "That was my medicine stock. 3 months of work gone." "They wanted to cripple you," Sam said. "Make the town lose faith." He spotted a boot print near the ashes, a worn heel rolled to the left. "Morrison," he muttered. "He's not even trying to hide it." "Can we prove it?" Quote. "Not in court," Sam said, "but we can make sure he knows we're not scared." Quote. Martha straightened, soot streaking her face. "Then let's go to town." An hour later, they rode into Cedar Ridge, the townsfolk whispering behind their hands. The medicine woman's shed had burned, and everyone wanted to see what she'd do next. They found Morrison at breakfast in the boarding house, his boots on a chair and his grin wide, until Sam kicked the table over. "That's for the fire," Sam said. Morrison lunged to his feet, but Sam already had his Colt out. The room froze. "You got proof?" Morrison spat. Sam's voice stayed calm. "Got your boot print. Got witnesses who saw you buying coal oil yesterday. That's enough for me." He cocked the hammer, put $60 on the table. Compensation for damages. Morrison's jaw clenched. "You can't just—" "I can," Sam interrupted. "And I am." The room was silent except for the sound of bills hitting the table. Sam holstered his gun and nodded once. "Next time you come at us, do it like a man, not a snake." When they walked out, the crowd outside the saloon parted for them. Martha exhaled shakily. "You shouldn't have pushed him." "I didn't push him," Sam said. "I drew the line." "There's a difference." They used the money to restock what they could at the general store. Thomas Garrett, the shopkeeper who once courted Martha, was back in town, looking worn and nervous. "Heard what happened," he said. "Aldrich's men been hitting everyone. Freight costs are bleeding us dry." "What if there was another way?" Sam asked. "Like what?" "Like a freight line owned by the people," Martha said. "Fair rates, shared profits." Garrett blinked. "You'd need allies and protection." "We're working on both," Sam said. By noon, they'd spoken to the blacksmith, the seamstress, and half a dozen ranchers. Everywhere they went, the story was the same. Aldrich squeezing harder, taking more. That afternoon, a shout went up near the saloon. They ran to see Mrs. Chen surrounded by Morrison's men, her clean laundry scattered in the dirt. "Town council passed a new law," Morrison said loudly. No foreigners running businesses inside city limits. Mrs. Chen stood firm. I've been here 20 years, longer than you. Morrison reached for her arm and stopped when Sam's hand clamped on his wrist. You touch her again, Sam said quietly, and you'll lose that hand. The crowd murmured. What law is this? Martha asked. Emergency session last night. One man offered. Mayor Aldrich, Doc Morrison, and the banker voted. 3 men making laws in the dark, Martha said, her voice rising. Does that sound like justice to any of you? People shifted uneasily. Someone muttered, No, it doesn't. Then we fix it, Martha said. Town meeting. Tonight at 7. Anyone who owns property or works honest can attend. We'll decide what kind of town Cedar Ridge wants to be. You can't call a meeting, Morrison snapped. She can, Sam said. She's a property owner and a married woman. The law gives her that right. Hands started going up across the crowd. Small ranchers, shopkeepers, families. The power was shifting right before Morrison's eyes. He glared at Martha. You're stirring trouble. I'm stirring justice, she said. That night, the meeting hall overflowed. Men and women packed shoulder to shoulder, lanterns flickering over determined faces. Sam stood near the door, watching for trouble while Martha stepped to the front. Citizens of Cedar Ridge, she began, her voice steady and strong. For too long, our town has been ruled by fear, by men who think money gives them the right to decide who belongs and who doesn't. That ends tonight. A murmur of approval rolled through the crowd. We can have a town where the law protects everyone, or one where it protects the powerful. The choice is ours. Someone shouted, We're with you, Mrs. Hawkins! Applause broke out, rough and raw. Even Sam felt his chest tighten. The woman beside him wasn't just a healer anymore. She was a leader. But not everyone was pleased. Near the back, Morrison slipped out the door. Sam followed him with his eyes, his hand brushing his gun. The next morning, word spread fast. Judge Carter was coming early, bringing a federal marshal to review land disputes across the territory. Martha stared at Sam as they sat at her father's desk that night. If we can prove Aldrich forged those debts, we can end this. Sam nodded. Then we gather everything. Every record, every name, and when the judge comes, we hit him with the truth. Days passed in a blur of preparation. Allies gathered, Mrs. Chen, Old Pete, Thomas Garrett, and even small ranchers tired of Aldrich's control. By the time Judge Carter's wagon rolled into town, half of Cedar Ridge stood ready to fight with words instead of guns. Court was held in the town hall. Aldrich arrived with lawyers and false witnesses. Martha and Sam came with boxes of ledgers and the truth. One by one, the lies began to crumble. Garrett testified about Aldrich's bribes. Mrs. Willis, who'd been paid to accuse Martha of witchcraft, confessed under oath. Then came the turning point. A thin, trembling chemist from Denver stepped forward. Harold Crawley. I mixed the mercury, he said. Mayor Aldrich paid me to poison Josiah Coleman. He said the old man was standing in the way of progress. The hall erupted in shouts. Judge Carter's gavel thundered. Order! Marshal! Arrest Mayor Aldrich and Dr. Morrison for conspiracy and murder. It was over. Just like that, the man who'd terrorized Cedar Ridge for years was led away in irons. When silence finally fell, Carter looked down from the bench. Mrs. Hawkins, your father's land and claims are hereby confirmed as rightful and legal. And as for practicing medicine, this court finds that helping your neighbors is no crime. Continue your work. Martha's knees nearly gave out. Sam caught her arm. It's done, he said softly. She turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. No, Sam. It's just beginning. Months later, Cedar Ridge had changed. The freight line was a cooperative. The mine profits were shared. And on the mountain, Martha and Sam's cabin had become a gathering place for the town's new future. Sam found her one evening in the garden, teaching children how to use herbs to heal. She looked up as he approached. Judge Carter sent a letter, she said. They want me to speak in Denver about healing and fairness. You'll go? Quote, "We'll go," she corrected, smiling. "Partners, remember?" Sam chuckled. "Always." As the sun set behind the peaks, painting the sky in golden rose, he took her hand. "You remember that day in the square?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Martha teased. "I told you you were coming to my bed." "And I did," Sam said with a grin. "Never left since." Martha laughed, leaning into him as the evening breeze rustled the pines. Up in the mountains, the land Josiah Coleman had fought for still stood strong. And in the heart of Cedar Ridge, a woman's courage and a cowboy's loyalty had changed everything. The mountain woman and the cowboy had started with desperation and ended with a love that rebuilt a town.